2024 is not over for college football or the Iowa Hawkeyes, but in this day and age, we're constantly looking ahead. And of course, 2025 is basically here with player additions from the recruiting class and soon to be the transfer portal. Appreciate you being here on Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. And of course, the guy that makes it all go for us, Corey Bratta. And check out his work every day at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. We're a couple days removed from the announcement of bowl game. I haven't even talked about it because, the portal window, everything is so weird. It's like everything is combined now. We have to have signing day and championship week and bowl announcements plus the portal opening. And not to mention you have head coaching vacancies. You got Bill Belichick now maybe going to North Carolina. It's just a lot of stuff happening all at once. And it's not great for business, but I guess maybe some of the national shows, it's great for you. You always have, big shows to do. I'm sure
it is. And we basically determined, Leanne Herring and myself, we started a recruiting show that we were going to do once a week. And in fact, we've decided to do it every day, at least during the transfer portal window, because there's just so much to talk about. So, yeah, there is quite a bit to talk about. Concerning the Hawkeyes, we'll go to the personnel route because I know that's what everybody's interested in, even though I will look forward to watching a Music City Bowl with Iowa from the Big Ten, Missouri from the SEC. And those are always marquee matchups to me in regards to the conferences they represent, if nothing else. And of course, as we get closer to game time, we're going to have a better look at each team and who's actually coming to play and which varies team to team. But Logan Jones, of course, as you outlined on your channel, coming back for a sixth season, a center who, of course, among with a number of guys were largely responsible for this team leading the Big Ten in rushing, 38 starts, definitely a huge, and this part of the theme of this time of year as well, not just who you can go out and acquire through National Signing Day and through the transfer portal, but who you retain can be key to success the next season.
Yeah, and Iowa didn't really have a ton of, with the COVID thing being basically a thing of the past. It's funny because I said it was a thing of the past, and I thought it was a thing of the past, but then Logan's coming back for a sixth year, and he was here in 2020. Well, the reason is, actually, I don't really know the official reason. I'll just be quite honest. It doesn't really matter. He's coming back. He played in 2020, but then also only played 2 games in 21. So I'm assuming the way that works with the NCAA is they say it's a free year in 2020. So then he's also able to redshirt, even though he redshirted and didn't play in 20. It's a free year, doesn't count. He was able to redshirt in 21 because he had an injury, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so I guess I probably should have known that. Let me get my light on here so it's a little better.
So in a sense, was he a freshman in 21 and a redshirt freshman in 22, a sophomore in 23, a junior in 24, and a redshirt senior in 25?
I guess theoretically, yeah, if 2020 doesn't count, then he was actually a redshirt freshman in 22, yeah. 22. So I didn't really think about him returning. I know, I know, the guys that I expect to return. I have been given no indication that any of those guys are going to hop to the league. So, like Jennings Dunker, expect him to come back. I don't imagine that there's any draft stock really for Bo Stevens to explore the NFL draft early. So it would be Logan Jones was the guy that he and Aaron Graves on the other side. That if you're going to talk about anybody that could have jumped to the league this year, we haven't gotten an announcement yet from Aaron Graves, but I would think he comes back. And I really don't know who else would leave early for the draft. I think all the guys that are high on the draft boards are guys that came back last year for an extra season. And therein lies the frustration with the results of this season because they brought so many guys back. But less of those decisions this year. But I was actually mildly surprised because I just hadn't really asked and I hadn't really heard a whole lot about speculation regarding Logan. But they need that. They need some stability there, and that will help. I don't know how much it'll help their search for a quarterback, but it doesn't hurt having a 6th-year signal caller there. Now, I did talk about this on the video I just published here moments ago on my channel. You're likely going to see some attrition because of this decision, and whether it's admitted or not. They've got, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who I look at as centers on the roster. 2 of those guys, they have 1 year left of eligibility. So I unless the guy just wants to stick around and play, maybe compete for that other guard spot, a guard spot that's up for grabs, maybe. But I'm guessing they're going to lose one of those guys. Josh Janowski's a freshman this year. No reason to think this will affect his decision. It impacts him, and maybe it'll actually be good for a young guy like that who came in early last spring. He'll get another year to learn behind Logan Jones. Leighton Jones is going into year 3. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. Still a couple of years for him. So I wouldn't think this will impact his decision, although he's not an Iowa kid like some of these guys on the list are. Jeremy Chaplin is a preferred walk-on. We've seen a whole slew of walk-ons enter here over the last couple of days because everybody's got to get their rosters down to 105. So, I've always said I hate to speculate about who may enter the portal, but we're kind of to the point where does it really matter? Because so many guys hit the portal. I don't think it's disrespectful to say, hey, this guy may enter the portal. I could see him leaving. So Jeremy Chaplin, I could see him leaving. And then Michael Myslinski, it was brought up. JT just brought him up here in the chat a second ago. He doesn't have to enter in response to JT's comment. Again, if Michael thinks he might be able to compete at a guard spot, the problem with him, he's very similar to Jeff Bowie, who is a defensive lineman who just entered, talked about it yesterday on the channel. He was a scholarship guy. Myslinski's a scholarship guy as well. He's from Florida. He's got 1 year left. He's been ransacked by injuries. Have hardly seen him in an Iowa uniform. Maybe he wants a fresh start for year 5. And his old teammate, James Rezar from Florida, is now in the portal as well. And then Cade Borad transferred in from North Dakota during the offseason. He got that OWI, but he was an all Missouri Valley Conference newcomer of the year a couple seasons ago for the Fighting Hawks. He is a redshirt sophomore, so he would have another year after Logan Jones leaves to potentially start. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I would say in order of guys to look for as it relates to decisions would be Michael Myslinski at the top, especially given the fact that he's a scholarship guy. Jeremy Chaplin would be right there. And you say, well, who cares about walk-ons? Well, walk-ons play, especially on the offensive line at Iowa. They play, and Chaplin has played sparingly here and there. So he'd be another guy to look for. And then I think after that, Cade Borad. Cade Pieper, he can place center, it sounds like, but I think they've used him a couple different places. He's still young. He was in year 2. He's flexible. And, if he somehow sustained an injury, he's got I think he's got a redshirt year to use as well. So, but my guess is this will affect Iowa positively, and you may lose a guy that, again, Michael Myslinski and Jeremy Chaplin, they're not going to have a role other than providing depth if they return.
Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We talk Iowa football with all of you each and every Tuesday, 4:30 Central, with Corey Bradda from the Hawkeye of the Storm, men's and women's basketball coverage there throughout the season. And Corey, I'm counting 8 lost through the transfer portal at this point. Obviously, guys can change their mind and retract their portal decision and stay. That rarely happens. But 8 losses. So Marco Lionez, Caleb Brown, those are 2 that are somewhat headliners to a certain extent. LeSean Williams, but of course he left sometime early October, and he's already at Kansas. Who do you think really is an impact here?
Well, I was just bummed out that Marco left. I mean, by the way, let me make
That's your guy.
Let me make something very clear. And I broke that story Sunday night. I was told on conclusive 100% authority he was entering the portal Monday morning. He did. However, let me just say this one. The source also told me this. He remains in excellent standing with Iowa. I say that because he's coming off a thumb injury. And my understanding is he was given the opportunity to stick with the team through bowl prep. That's not something that typically occurs. If a guy enters the portal, now Kirk may handle some situations differently this year, But I'm saying with Kirk Ferentz, Mark, I don't think he's ever done that with a non-graduate guy. Dallas Cradith did it a couple of years ago because he graduated. But the rule of thumb for Kirk has historically been over the last few seasons of this portal stuff. If a guy enters the portal, he ain't with the team. That's his sign off. So we'll see what Marco does here next few weeks. But my point is, don't close. And you may laugh at this because people thought he was leaving all year. And some people want him gone because of what they read on social media and because they think they know everything about football and everything about that happens in the Iowa practice facility each and every day, even though they've never set foot on they have no idea what the practice facility looks like other than Instagram photos. But anyways, I digress. Don't be shocked if somebody ends up exiting the portal like Johnny Pascuzzi did last year. Now, Pascuzzi was different. He's a walk-on. They had no scholarship limits at the time. But I'll just say what I said. Marco Lainez remains in good standing with Iowa, with Kirk Ferentz, maintains a good relationship there. So that is, I don't know that you can draw conclusions on anybody now with how the new scholarship stuff works, and because there's going to be more guys that enter the portal. And perhaps that means once things settle down on the whole scholarship limits, that there may be a few guys more each year that end up returning to their respective schools. I think that could happen with Iowa. But like I said, Marco maintains a good relationship with Iowa. He would be the biggest frustration for me because he's just got great wheels, great athleticism, great speed. I think he could play probably a couple of different positions, but my guess is he wants to play quarterback, and wherever he ends up, James Rezar leaves. There's another quarterback who had been converted to receiver during the year and tore something in his knee, it sounds like. So literally Iowa's last two quarterback recruits out of high school, Mark, gone within Rezar within a few months of him landing at Iowa. And Lainez, this was his redshirt freshman year. By the way, I don't blame any of those guys. I mean, I get it to some extent. Jeff Bowie had 1 year left. He's another guy. He's just dealt with too many injuries. He was in a sling. I remember last year at Kids Day. This year was having a great spring, great fall camp. Jay Neiman told us during the season he expected Jeff to start getting snaps and then never really made it back and ended up, I don't know if he had a setback, but he did deal with a lower leg injury toward the end of fall camp, beginning of the season. So there's three scholarship guys. You mentioned Leishon, who actually flipped. He was initially committed to Memphis and then like a week later committed to Kansas. So that's the nature of the portal. Caleb Brown is officially in the portal. And by the way, for folks that don't understand it, Leishon was able to be in the portal a long time ago. Caleb Brown was just able to hit the portal because he wasn't yet a graduate. So that's the reason why Leishon was already able to take visits and do all that. But Leishon's headed to Kansas. Caleb Brown's in the portal. And then who am I missing? Scholarship guys. Was there someone else? You said 8. It's more than 8 now. It's got to be more than 8 total.
And this could be an old article. This is on 247 Sports, but this may be old. I'm looking at Marco Lainez, Johnny Pascuzzi, James Rezar, Grant Leeper, Cade McNamara, Jeff Bowie, Leishon Williams, Caleb Brown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's just scholarship guys. So, I mean, we're not even talking about – and Pascuzzi's not – no, that's just an old list. I don't look at 247 much, but Pascuzzi, remember he had entered the portal last year and then opted to return. Did catch a 40-yard pass this year for Iowa at tight end and was a productive guy. He'll get some high major offers. I think he already has some FBS attention. I think I'd have to go back and look, but they'll be fine at tight end. They're losing a slew of walk-ons. Graham Friedrichsen at receiver, Jalen Thompson at tight end. They're losing. Who else are they losing? I think Kyson Van Voot also entered, if I'm not mistaken. You mentioned Grant Leeper came here as a gray shirt, was on scholarship. I actually really liked him. The guys that I really liked coming out of high school, it'd be Marco and Leeper. I was disappointed to see Grant hop in, but that tight end room is deep. He had a late offer from Indiana. He's an Indiana kid. Maybe he wants to go back to the Hoosiers. Maybe they'll recruit him now that they're in the college football playoff. Had an offer from Wake, I think, as well. Caden Crawford. Thank you, Erica. Caden Crawford is another scholarship kid on the defensive line that was starting to get some headway. I can tell you that on good authority. In fall camp, when we chatted with Kelvin Bell, Jay Neiman, it sounded like Caden had taken a step forward. You could see that physically. He had just gotten a lot bigger, and guys do when they go to Iowa a couple years into the program. But he's from, I believe, the Kansas, was it Lansing, Kansas? He's down there. I know he had an offer from Kansas State, and Kansas had a high school. And so he's another scholarship guy. Ryan Keenan's also in the portal. Rusty Van Wetzinga is in the portal. So he played some fullback for Iowa this year. It sounds like he maybe wants to pursue linebacker opportunities. His dad is, Rusty Van Wetzinga is Rusty the Fourth. His dad, Rusty the Third, is the coach up there at what school is that he's coaching at? I'd have to go back and look at the high school. But his brother, Joey Van Wetzinga, just signed with Iowa as a scholarship lineman. So it's just ironic. He's signing, and then his brother enters the portal and is exiting. But they were both coached by their dad, Rusty. So I'm sure I'm missing a couple of guys in there that I haven't had time to talk about all these guys. Basically, my goal, Mark, is to release one video a day. You and I have talked about this. Get a video up a day. So today, thank you, Doc P, Pleasant Valley. So that's where the Van Wetzingas are from. But posted a video here just a little bit ago about Logan Jones, but still have not really talked about I've talked about Miller Moss. We talked about Miller Moss on a live show, and I cut a segment up there. But I've not talked about Connor Wiegman, have not talked about...
But that's not necessarily a football video per day, or is it?
No, you're right. But right now, we've got post-game stuff. We got Cyhawk games. We got women's Cyhawk tomorrow, men's Cyhawk Thursday. So that comes at you fast. And then you got everything happening with football. And then there's players that are... Sounds like Hank Brown from Auburn is going to be taking a visit to Iowa, it sounds like, through the grapevine there, potentially. Don't know of any dates yet there. I'm sure our guy Elliot or maybe Tom Caker to HawkeyeReport.com could give us some insight there. But, that's something that's happening as well. It's just a busy time of year, not just for recruiting, but roster news.
You mentioned two quarterbacks. A good video for you to post would be quarterback speculation to come to the Hawkeyes, but I'm going to preempt that by asking you right now, in terms of, do you have a quarterback list? You mentioned Connor Wiegman. I'll jump right on that immediately, in that if they've got a chance to get Connor Wiegman, go. Even more so than Miller Moss.
I agree.
Go get him.
Yes, I said that right when it happened. He's a better prospect than Miller Moss, and he's got more time in front of him. The problem is, I don't think Iowa can afford either guy.
I think Iowa, excellent player.
Sounds like Iowa contacted both those guys. They've been in contact, but it definitely sounds like Miller Moss, that thing is not happening. And my guess is, if they can't afford Moss, they also can't afford Wiegman. So I don't think either of those guys are going to happen. And I saw somebody earlier today about Hank Brown, like, oh, he's just okay. I sent when I caught some information on the Hank Brown stuff, sent it on to a friend who's like, hey, why are we going after a guy who may not be the starter next year at Auburn, and his numbers were just okay? And I'm like, this is what Iowa can afford. That's all there is to it. Like, this is what Iowa can afford. So you better hope that this is what it all comes down to. If you don't have money, you better have a guy who can find the diamonds in the rough. And that's what you have to hope Tim Lester's doing, is he's looking for diamonds in the rough. Now, he could have focused on, developing the guys he had. Obviously, they didn't think that James Rezar had any future at quarterback. And Marco, they kept him at quarterback. But, by them going to basically it being out there that they're going to the portal to try to add guys when they have Brennan Sullivan coming back and Cade McNamara leaving, that is not incentive for young guys like Marco to stick around. I would have loved for him to have stuck around, but this is the day and age we live in, and the college football era that we're a part of. So they got to look for people they can afford, and they just got to hope that Tim Lester can find diamonds in the rough. Now, there was somebody in the chat that brought up the Richmond guy. Is it Camden Coleman? So he's a guy, I don't have any information on Camden Coleman. I do think, if I'm not mistaken, that our guys over at Hawkeye Report, Blair Sanderson, Tom Caker, those guys have talked about Camden Coleman. I'll let people go over to there. I'm not going to spoil anything they've said over on their site. So you can go check that out on HawkeyeReport.com. But, here's a guy who's an FCS kid and there are FCS guys that are wanted by high major programs that are going to cost money too. So that's what makes it even more challenging. But if Tim Lester can find somebody that other people don't know about, that's an assignment. And so hence don't cost as much. That's the ideal. But otherwise, you're probably going to be looking at getting guys like Hank Brown or, a Cade McNamara type that the ceiling is not real high, but the floor may not be real low.
Look at what Minnesota picked up in Max Brosmer, who turned out, I know that he didn't play his best game against the Hawkeyes. So for Iowa fans that didn't see him play other than that night, I think he played okay, but I don't really recall. Of course, they only put up 2 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah, but don't you think Max Brosmer would cost more money now than he would have a year ago?
Yes.
That's the other problem. And I don't mean like, I'm saying with what he did at New Hampshire, if he was I'm just saying, I don't know this. He would cost more now. He's not in the portal, is he? Is he done?
No, I just brought him up as an FCS guy that jumped to the big time.
But if you have a guy who's putting all kinds of records and numbers up at a place like New Hampshire, he's going to be likely generating plenty of high number offers. So that's what I'm saying. I think there's more money on the table for a kid like that out of a small FCS school now than there even was a year ago, which makes it even more challenging.
On Tuesday afternoon, I record on Michigan podcast, and Steve Dace was telling me this afternoon, and I hope it doesn't become a wild, wild west, which I guess we've already passed that threshold. But he's basically warning me and wanted a response from me. He said, what Ohio State did this past offseason is nothing. Michigan is going to they will match anything Ohio State or anybody else can do and blow it away going forward. They have those kind of resources. And then he's like, respond to that. My response was, until I see it actually happen, I have no response to it. I said, I'm speaking to the guy that wanted to fire Jim Harbaugh just a few years ago and was telling me that was the way to go. So I'm not going to respond to anything until I actually see Michigan buying whatever players they want. And I just hope college football doesn't get to that extreme.
Well, yeah, I think what you said earlier, it's sort of already there, isn't it?
Well, it's there to a certain extent. The one thing that we do have possibly going for us old timers, and I'll include you as an old timer, just in the way that you would like to see the pendulum swing back, not just from a money standpoint, but from a approach standpoint, is that at least if these players start getting paid as they're supposed to be, formally, we're separating NIL from a paycheck, a salary structure that's within the revenue sharing. That's supposed to kick in 2025. Then they can keep these players on the field for these bowl games and legitimize these bowl games again, because they're going to be tied to a scholarship / contract to earn money. So they're going to have to be tied to their teams. If I'm doing the business, if that doesn't become part of the plan, then college football is not doing it the right way.
By the way, one guy we missed out on as it relates to just speculation, a different Brown, and that'd be Devin Brown. Remember, he's in the portal too, and there was the speculation about him last year. But is it Matt in the chat who brings up likely out of his price range? I have not heard any numbers about what he's. It's hard to know what to believe, anyways, if you get numbers. But my guess is he would be in the range of. Maybe not a Connor Weigman, but maybe a Connor Weigman, frankly.
Well, he's not accomplished anything.
Well, but he's been at Ohio State. He's been at Ohio State, high recruit. What's Connor Weigman accomplished? He hasn't accomplished a whole lot.
But being on the field in the SEC, throwing touchdown passes. That's what I'm not talking
Devin
about
Brown has
championships.
Devin Brown has thrown touchdown passes in the Big Ten.
Connor Weigman won the starting quarterback job at Texas A&M multiple times and went out and had productive seasons. Now, what happened last year was he got hurt. He was off to a great start. Off the top of my head, 10 touchdowns, 2 picks. Off to a great start. Saw him play a number of times. 5-star prospect coming out of high school. Got hurt, missed like the last 6 games. This year, won the job. off to a great start, playing well. They were trailing LSU in the second half by 2 scores. They benched him. Wasn't necessarily his fault, but anyway, benched him. Bring in Marcel Reed, who's like a low budget Lamar Jackson type, just wheels and dynamic type runner. They come back, they beat LSU, they get on a roll. Weigman loses his job because of that. So obviously he's looking for another spot. But Devin Brown's done nothing but mop up 50-7 games.
What? Who are the top, without looking at lists right now, who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the portal?
Connor Weigman, I believe, is the best.
Really? You think he's number 1 out there?
Right now.
Wow. That's incredible.
Who's better?
Not the kid from Boston College?
Oh, Stylianos.
Yeah.
No.
Not
better than him.
What about the kid from Liberty? He's getting some high
Caden
major.
Salter. Now, I have not seen him play because I'm not watching Liberty play football.
That's what I'm saying, though.
He might be.
Yeah, and like that's the type of kid, like Cam Ward when he came out of Incarnate Word. Yeah. Like just, and then he ends up at Miami. Those are the types of guys that if they were productive like that level at FCS or a G5, they're going to be right there at the top with everybody else.
The highest rated quarterback, I just looked at 247's rankings today, was Malik Murphy out of Duke.
Yeah, he's another one.
I would take Weigman over him, but it's close. He's an athlete. He's a freakish type athlete.
But like I said, it doesn't matter because Iowa can't afford those guys. I just don't think they can afford them.
I wonder what kind of money we're talking about compared to what they are budgeted for.
I know what. Well, I won't go there, but I know what Iowa needed to do with Cade, what that ended up being, and he was not a. I mean, what was he a top 10 guy in that portal class? You don't think he was a top 10 quarterback in that portal class? And we're talking Connor Weigman, who's a top 3 or 4 guy in the current portal class to this point. I would think he's going to be double, at least what Cade McNamara would cost. They can't afford that.
And obviously they need to go out and get other players. So they're having to balance that with.
That's why it helps getting Logan Jones back today. That helps because they need to make sure they have a good center. It's a big part of the run game. And obviously a big part of having good quarterback play. That now, like, you can look at that and say, don't got to worry about snaps. Don't got to worry about snaps, and that's a piece of the run game that is solid. You can't ask for anything better than that. But you're right. Like, is the next left tackle on the roster, or is he in the portal? Do they want to spend money on another offensive lineman after that? I think they may, because I don't know who else plays left tackle. Who's ready to step in and be left tackle? Do you move Jennings Dunker over to left, and then who's ready to play right? Is it a Jack Dotzler? Is it a Cale Crow? These guys who have never really seen any field time? Is it Trevor Lauk, who was a high 4-star recruit out of high school? Is it Cannon Leonard, who is like 6'8", but has never seen the field? Like, they got guys sitting there on the roster, and a good indication of what Iowa plans to do will be, do any of those guys hop in the portal here at the remainder of the week? Because, I mean, like I said, it's not just about scholarships anymore. It's about roster spots.
On3 posts, in addition to their recruiting rankings and their portal rankings, dollar values for these guys. But I do not believe, based on what I know, and I'm not on there looking at it, but based on when they started that, what the feedback I heard was that those were like some kind of fantasy land comparison. It wasn't real market money. It was, we think this guy's the best guy, so he gets $1 million, and this guy gets 800,000. He's the second best guy, or whatever.
Well, what's Bryce Underwood getting at by going to Michigan?
I heard $17 million
for his whole career.
Whole career.
But that's, I mean, think about that. So he's not going to be there 4 years if he's as good as people think he is. So I'm assuming he gets a 17 mil, whether he's there 2 years or he's there 4 years.
5.5 a year plus.
And maybe if I'm doing business, I'm saying $5.5 million per year. I'm not giving you 17 million for 2. But what I'm saying is 5. That's out of the ballpark of what Cade made in 2. This way, I think people know that. That's out of the ballpark for what Cade made in 2. So, like, what are we doing? If they're paying a high school kid who hasn't proven anything that, then what are some schools offering a guy like Connor Wiegman or like the kid from Liberty? That's why I without knowing what these kids are getting offered by certain schools, I just don't think Iowa can compete there.
Yeah, that's understandable. The one figure that I kept hearing during the offseason was that, and I don't know how substantiated this is, that Ohio State spent $20 million to either retain its current roster and go out and get 2 or 3 of the best players in the country. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's number one. I don't know if that's accurate, but I keep hearing that figure. Number 2, I don't know how many other teams are within range. I don't know if that means Iowa's spending $6-8 million. I would love to know all that.
I would have to think Iowa's got somewhere in the range of 6 to 10 million to spend in total. But I'm just guessing. I haven't had those. I don't know that any of us know exactly what they have. There's always a possibility that you could get some late donor, like with what, nothing to the level of what happened with Underwood, but that's what some of these schools are able to do. Is they're able to. It's kind of like watching the old Celebrity Apprentice. Do you ever watch that? You ever watch Celebrity Apprentice, Mark? I
No,
was never a
not.
reality. I was never a reality television guy, but I will admit, watching Celebrity Apprentice, I loved watching, like, let's see, Gary Busey go at, him and Meatloaf go at it, and got to see John Rich and, man, Sinbad, and I mean, all those guys. John Lovitz was on the show, and totally horrible on that show, by the way. But who's the little comedian? Gilbert Gottfried. He was on the show. It's just insane. But the reason I bring that up is Gilbert Gottfried could fundraise, and I shouldn't even say fundraise. He could call somebody. I remember one episode of the Celebrity Apprentice where they were, I don't know if it was like doing an ice cream. They were like trying to sell ice cream in New York. And basically he just kept calling these crazy people that had these weird acts. Like, they could spin a basketball on their head, or, for 20 minutes, whatever, like these weird things. And he would just put them in front of the store to get people to come up. And it was the strangest skill to be able to call just a random people up. But then you have the other people who would be able to just, I'm trying to think of a good example, but there were always the individuals that had money connections, and hey, just pick up your phone and say, hey, I need $4 million. And these people, so like, that's happening now. That's happening now. There are donors and these boosters that are, they've got money to spend. It's out of my frame of mind to be able to comprehend having millions of dollars and so, oh, my phone's ringing. Hey, he wants $3 million. Oh, okay. Like, I can't imagine that. But do you have any doubt that's happening in other places, Mark, with college football?
No, I don't doubt that. And by the way, the voice of college football needs $4 million.
Yeah, I could use
$4
some.
million.
I could use them.
Yeah.
I could just use
Okay.
$1 million. $1 million would be nice.
There we go. Yeah, that would be fine. I guarantee, and I will promise the giver of the $4 million or whatever it turns out to be, I'll put like 50 grand into a set. So I'll reinvest like 50 grand. The rest of it's salary.
Yeah.
So we'll upgrade the 50 grand.
What am I seeing on the edge of the Iowa?
You're seeing, there we go.
Oh,
It's just where my cursor was.
I gotcha.
Kind of pulls the screen over.
Yeah.
So Eric is telling us something. I did see this. Well, per Matt Zenitz, Auburn transfer quarterback Hank Brown will visit Iowa on Thursday.
So yeah, I can't personally confirm that, but apparently it's out there. Like I said, I knew he was taking a visit, but if he's here Thursday, then great, they get him in right away. I'm guessing that's his first visit. The portal just opened today or yesterday, so I don't know. I don't even know what other schools are in on him. Mark, have you heard what other schools are in on Hank Brown?
I have not. I have not.
What do you know about Hank Brown, by the way?
Very little. I've seen him throw a few passes. I knew he was at Auburn, and he only got to play because of injuries / Peyton Thorne getting benched because Auburn's been really bad. And Hugh Freeze should look in the mirror because basically he's supposed to be an offensive guru, and his offense and passing attack has been atrocious the last 2 years. But at various times they have benched Peyton Thorne. Hank Brown has stepped in and done not so well. Done okay.
So if you want to know his high major offers out of high school, I'll read them to you. Illinois, Minnesota, Pitt. That's it.
Where's he from?
Well, he's not. I don't believe he's from Nashville, but he transferred to play high school ball maybe as a junior or senior at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville. So I don't know where he's originally from. I don't know his birthplace. I could find that out. But I'm guessing maybe his family doesn't live there, because if they did, I'm guessing Iowa would make a visit there once they're down for bowl prep, since they're going to Nashville. But yeah, I'll find this. Hey, go ahead.
Well, I was going to address Isaac. I do this every so often. So the reason I don't have an Iowa helmet is because I used to have a P.O. box, and all you fine folks actually purchased 90% of these, and we never got an Iowa helmet, but we shut down the P.O. box. It's been a good 2.5 years now since I've added any helmets, but Iowa will be near the top of the list when, in fact, we do decide to add more helmets at some point, or maybe we won't.
Yeah, I don't know where he was born, but he played for Trent Dilfer at Lipscomb. So, okay. I would guess that there maybe will be some opportunity for Iowa to go down there and make some connections, even though he's coming here apparently, that once he get down there, they'll be able to make some connections down in Nashville during bowl prep.
Who is the best Iowa player who is transferred out and turned into a productive player somewhere else? Like Keegan Johnson is the first guy that comes to mind. Well, Charlie Jones.
What has Keegan Johnson done? He's been average at best. He fumbled.
Well, I can't think of anybody else, but Charlie Jones is the king. So I just answered my own question because I forgot about Charlie Jones for a brief second, but he
fumbled that game.
Charts.
Yeah, Keegan Johnson fumbled that game away against Iowa State, right?
Oh, for Kansas State?
Yeah, for Kansas State.
This just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he fumbled the ball, a big fumble, and big turning point in the game. And James brings up Tyrone Tracy, 100%. That dude's starting as a running back for the Giants. Think about that. I mean, and I know people. It's hilarious when people. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I bring this up all the time. It's like the Marco Lednes thing. I made a comment a day or two ago about Iowa not being able to utilize Marco's skill set, and they weren't able to utilize it on the football field on Saturdays. Now, maybe Marco just didn't want to do anything other than go out there and be the primary quarterback. I don't know that to be the truth. Maybe that's the truth. But all these know-it-alls on the internet that act like they know exactly what's happening behind closed doors. Why do you think people act that way, Mark? Why do they think they know everything that happens behind closed doors? My guess is a lot of them are subscribed to message boards where other media people say, I've got a source telling me this. Well, just keep in mind that just like when Keegan Johnson transferred out, I was very hesitant to jump on the Keegan Johnson gave up on Iowa thing, because I know the side from his camp, and it's totally different than what Iowa wanted people in the fan base to think and what Iowa sources were telling media people. It's completely different. So I take everything I hear when there's something like this where there, you have basically two sides. It's like a breakup, right? You have two sides of a breakup. I've brought up Mitchell Tenpenny's song before. There's two sides to every breakup. So I don't know that Tyrone Tracy was asked to switch to running back. I don't know that he wasn't, but somebody 2 days ago, he was asked to switch to running back and he refused. Who cares? He went to running back at Purdue and ended up carving himself an NFL draftable highlight reel. And now he's a starter. He's a starto in the Meadowlands. Think about that. So if he refused at Iowa, it's odd that he didn't refuse at Purdue. Maybe it's because he had more confidence in the staff there. But it's like people, they want to. I get it; they're fans, so they want to take any opportunity to defend their team. But it is. Can we agree? They didn't utilize. If he's a starting level running back in the league, he shouldn't have had to fall off the wide receiver depth chart mark and transfer out to play running back somewhere else. That shouldn't have happened. And maybe he just wanted to do that. I don't know. That could have been the case. But I just wish people would stop speaking in ultimatums like they know everything that goes on. Even if Kirk Ferentz himself said, this is what happened, Tyrone Tracy may say something totally different. And you don't know what's right from wrong. So I've said that before. Go ahead, Mark.
So Randy is making a statement here that it's time for a salary cap on NIL. So
yeah,
you can't do that, Randy. So the issue there is that how can there be a salary cap? There can be a salary cap on salaries if we get to that point, because that's tied directly to a business, meaning like the NFL, Major League Baseball, etc. Those leagues can build a salary cap because they tie it to their income. They can say 52% or whatever the figure goes to the players. Therefore, we're going to adjust the salary cap because they're running a business. They're trying to stay solvent. And to run a business, you can say we need this much money for operating costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, we can give the players 52%. NIL, this is gifted money from whomever. How do you put a cap on that? You can't in a free society say, well, sorry, you can't give this guy any more money. He's got too much money.
It's not supposed to be gifted money. It's supposed to be money made off name, image, and likeness.
Yes.
But that's the problem. You can't draw a line anywhere.
Yeah.
And so really the only way that what Randy's saying could actually happen, salary cap, so to speak, on NIL is through legislation. That's the only way that you could. And even then it would be very difficult to legislate, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point, I mean, this all goes back to the Supreme Court decision that the NCAA could not tell players they can't make money. Basically, the NCAA had been keeping players from making money. Like they could work at Subway, but they couldn't advertise for Subway. I mean, how stupid is that? So it was stupid. We all can agree on that. But the fact that they allowed it, it would have never gone to the Supreme Court had the NCAA just been reasonable on the whole situation. But they weren't. And so that's the reason we're here.
Yeah. We have swung from one end of the pendulum all the way over to the other, where just a few years ago, you cannot earn any money legally as a collegiate athlete, to where now these guys are having money thrown at them.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to let everybody know that I'm happy to play for your team for the right figure amount, for the right dollar amount. I am happy to do that. And people just need to understand, Mark, that I will move and I'll, be on the sidelines. I may not play. I may not be good enough to play, but I will suit up if I'm eligible. And I will gladly sign and cash that check. And many checks to come.
So you would receive the check. You would have to have an agreement with the University of Iowa, I guess, to make the football team.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I won't be available the day of tryouts. I know that already. My schedule's booked that day, but I'm glad to take the cash and run. But I'll be entering the portal a few days later.
Isaac is looking for you to be on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, for you to be funding the next Iowa quarterback.
I need somebody to fund the show to keep it alive.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So this was 5 or 10 years ago. We'd be talking about a football game against Missouri in the Music City Bowl at the beginning. That's what people would be talking about. But now we'll probably lose viewers switching to the Music City Bowl discussion. But I'll be there. I'm invested. Missouri 9-3 had a 11-2 season last year and finished in the top 10. They're a good football team, not a great football team, but I don't know who's going to show up for them. We don't know who's going to show up for Iowa. Should have a better feel for that as we get closer to the game. But that's actually played this game after New Year's Day, correct?
No.
Oh.
No. December 30th.
December 30th. Okay.
Yep.
The Music City Bowl has typically been an entertaining game.
Well,
So,
you say that because the Purdue Tennessee game.
yeah,
stands
that one
out.
sticks out.
But the game last year, the game was it 2 years ago when Iowa beat
that
Kentucky
was
21-0. That was not an entertaining game.
That was for Iowa. They had 2 pick sixes.
2 pick sixes. Okay. All right. 2 pick sixes and
Those are fun to watch.
yeah. This is another audition for Brendan Sullivan to take the job and run with it. And regardless of if they bring in a guy like Hank Brown, if they bring in Hank Brown, he's not the automatic starter. At least he shouldn't be. If they guaranteed Hank Brown the starting role at Iowa, then they need to go to counseling because that would be a horrendous decision. And I saw a couple comments earlier. I saw Erica say something about, we can do better than Sully. I know she meant no disrespect to Brendan Sullivan. I have not seen enough out of Brendan Sullivan to draw a conclusion one way or the other. He really had one bad half, and it was against UCLA, and then he went down with injury. I want to see him healthy as the undisputed starter, and I've not seen that yet. So let's see what he can do. He's got great legs. We saw him hit a nice deep ball in that same UCLA game over the top to Jacob Gill. We hadn't seen him do something like that. We hadn't seen Iowa go over the top to anybody in how long actually successfully. So I think Brendan Sullivan's the starter next year. And because I don't think they're going to be able to get a guy, like I said earlier, they're not going to be able to pay a guy enough that is coming in the obvious starter. So they're going to add somebody in the portal at quarterback. They may add 2 guys in the portal at quarterback. But, they added a couple guys 2 years ago in the portal at quarterback. Remember who they were, Mark? They were Cade McNamara and Deacon Hill. So, obviously, Deacon Hill, I'm not saying it was bad that they picked him up. Heck, he ended up starting, all of last year. But I'm just saying, in general, just because you add somebody in the portal doesn't mean they're ever going to play. They just got to find a way to get the numbers up. Now, they do bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Not the Ryan Fitzpatrick who's, probably a Hall of Fame. Is he a Hall of Famer, you think?
No.
No?
Ryan Fitzpatrick?
He was phenomenal back in the day. Oh, Mark.
He was a backup quarterback.
He was a starter. He started
gunslinger.
for the Bucks. He started for the Dolphins.
He is not a
stint
Hall
in
of Famer.
Houston. That guy is a legend.
He's a legend of being a successful, hot and cold backup quarterback who got to start for really bad teams at times.
All right. Well, he did throw. He would throw 8 touchdowns and he throw 8 picks. It's just
exactly
ridiculous. But
yeah.
the other Ryan Fitzpatrick, it would be, I'm sorry, Fitzpatrick. Well, look at me.
I didn't know who you were. I was waiting to hear who Ryan Fitzpatrick was. I was
going to make more coffee, more espresso this afternoon, and I didn't get it done.
Yeah, so you don't want to do that.
That's the problem. Anymore. Ryan Fitzgerald, which would be Pat Fitzgerald's son, did sign with Iowa here a couple of days ago. Oh. He is coming in as a walk-on. So, isn't that weird? Isn't that an odd situation? I mean, nobody else is really talking about it being odd, but the fact that they've got Pat Fitzgerald's son as a quarterback on the Iowa roster next year is odd to me.
Why?
Well, it's just because he and Fitzgerald, Kirk and Fitzgerald, Pat, were 1A and 1B as far as longevity in this conference.
But they got along, right?
Oh, I think they have a lot of respect for one another.
Then it makes sense.
Yeah, isn't it odd? Also, does it mean that Fitzgerald will end up coaching at Iowa before Kirk Ferentz is done? What's Fitzgerald doing right now? Does anybody know that?
That's a great question.
What is Fitzgerald doing right now?
He's paying legal fees.
I wonder, here's I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second. I wonder if he ends up, if Seth Wallace, we'll see how long they can hold on to Seth Wallace. We'll see how long Phil Parker hangs around. But say Seth Wallace ends up taking a head offensive coordinator job in a year from now. I don't think that'll happen. He stayed loyal. He's had opportunities to leave. But say that happens. Would Pat Fitzgerald come in just to be a part of the mold and coach linebackers for Iowa for a couple of years? Or would he come in and be the DC if Phil Parker walked away?
I love Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah. It's just unique. So they need numbers. Losing Linez, losing Rezar. All they have next year, Mark, is Stratton, if he's back, we assume he's coming back. He's a walk-on right now. Stratton, Sullivan, the other Sullivan, and then Pat Fitzgerald's son. So that is 4 guys, but half of those guys are walk-ons, and one of them is going to be a redshirt, or other one's going to be a true freshman. So they've got to add at least one guy out of the transfer portal. And theoretically, you don't want to add another Deacon Hill. You want to add a guy who can compete right away for the starting job. Assuming something doesn't transfer with, or something doesn't change with a couple of the guys that are in the portal from Iowa now.
We have Pat Fitzgerald. Hank Brown's stats posted right there. So he had 1 start against New Mexico. That looks really good, albeit against the Lobos. 235, 4 touchdowns, no picks. But look at this next game against Arkansas. He only threw 13 passes, 3 picks. Ooh. Now, I'd like to see those to see, okay, what was the context of those picks?
Yeah, he played 1 good team in 2024. What did he do in 2023?
We will find out. I don't know that he did much, or I would have pulled that up.
Or you scroll down to Mark. Scroll down to.
No, I only had the 24 log there. There you go. 7 of 9 against. That was in the bowl game against Maryland.
So it's actually 7 of 9 for a $132 is pretty good. Yeah. But the sample size is so small. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's not coming in. I mean, he could come in and win the job, but if they bring him in, it's nothing to throw a party about. It's just they're adding a player. They're just adding a player. That's all there is to it. They're adding a player. Now, if they were brought in Wiegeman, that's throw a party. But I threw a party for Cade McNamara 2 years ago. And he begged all the fans. Mark, remember when he went on that podcast was it the Jordan Palmer podcast where he begged fans to keep saying that Iowa's offense was going to be crap. He's like, please keep saying we're going to be crap. Just keep saying it. Well, guess what? Guess what? They were crap. Anyways, what are we missing, Mark? What have
we'll be talking about Cade McNamara years and years from now. He'll go down in Iowa lore.
Deuce Hogan's back in the portal. New Mexico State, former Iowa quarterback. He's back in the portal. And I tweeted about this earlier for anybody that's not following me on the X. I'm at From the Hawkeye. Gavin Williams, former Iowa running back Gavin Williams, just finished his 5th. He's got 1 more game left because they play in the bowl game. Congratulations to the NIU Huskies. He is in his 5th season, and he ran for a career-high 5.5 yards per carry, over 700 yards in the ground this season. So there's a player who's went elsewhere and had success. Now, not at Power 4 level, but a solid FBS program in the MAC, Northern Illinois. So he's had success. So Charlie, you love you some FCS or FBS G5 program.
I'm talking about a successful player at the same level.
All right, Charlie Jones, Tyrone Tracy, and I mean, what has Justin Jacobs done? Should we look up Justin Jacobs while we're at it here in the last couple minutes of the show?
I can't answer that question.
Justin Jacobs transferred to Oregon. All the speculation was that he got a bag to go there, and he has struggled to see the field. He was injured for a while, but I mean, he was projected to be the guy after Jack Campbell left. Now, little did we know, Seth Wallace had several guys that were ready to fill those spots, like Nick Jackson, who they grabbed out of the portal, Jay Higgins, Kyler Fisher did well in his spot. But Justin Jacobs was a very big loss at the time and played very sparingly at Oregon, as I recall.
So his stats would say that he was a contributor, the 13th highest tackler on the team with 29.
Wow.
4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks.
That's like 2 games for Jay Higgins or Nick Jackson.
Sure. This is not the Iowa defense.
He's not getting drafted with that. Does he have eligibility left? I mean, that would be my next question. Does he have any eligibility left? Because if he doesn't, then I hope he made a lot of money to go to Oregon, because that's it. Like, that's the thing. Guys leave good situations now. They're putting their entire career in jeopardy. Even when they're well-known. I mean, he was a well-known commodity here. He went there and obviously has struggled to gain traction.
But if he wasn't going to play at Oregon at linebacker, he was certainly not going to play at Iowa unless they would not have gone out and made some of those acquisitions.
But he was playing. He was a starter at Iowa. He was starting alongside Jack Campbell and Seth Benson for a year, and he was a great slot cover guy. Like he was almost a high with his athleticism. That's why I'm so surprised. I know he's dealt with injuries, but that's why I'm so surprised that he's struggled to latch on there. And I know a lot of fans say, good riddance, you left. There's no way he's got eligibility left.
Yeah, he's done.
He's done. He ain't gonna get drafted. It's incredible, man. That's a sad story. Terry Roberts, another sad story. Terry Roberts enters the portal. He was a special team star at Iowa, had at least another year at corner left. You remember what happened to Terry Roberts, Mark? Because he entered the portal and was a high major DB prospect.
I don't remember what happened to him. I remember him at Iowa.
He committed to Miami.
Oh, yeah.
Was down there briefly. And then all of a sudden, he was no longer on the team. Re-entered the portal in the summer, I believe. That same summer. Never even played for Miami. Never even entered a fall camp for Miami. Then he goes to Michigan State. And right before their first game, like the week prior to the first game, his name disappears from the roster. And they basically say, yeah, he's no longer with the team. Very sad. And he had some really odd things to say about Iowa on his way out, which I think sort of burned bridges. Now with social media, you can't go that route to air your grievances because fans will forever hold it against you. But there's another example of a sad story that guy could have been, potentially a guy that makes the league, even if it's as a backup somewhere.
Well, that sounds like an off-field issue. If he's going to Miami and doesn't even, sure.
But he had no off-field issues at Iowa that I recall. Like he was known as a leader on special teams, a leader in the DB room. I thought it was odd that he left the way he did. So JT says he was arrested in Iowa City the week before fall camp started. I don't recall that. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I do not recall that. It's been a couple of years ago. But Arlen Bruce, he goes to Oklahoma State. What happened? Well, the gambling probe. And all of a sudden his career's over. So they've had those stories of guys that have left, and not that he ruined his career by leaving, but their careers have fizzled completely.
Do we know who Carl Cook is?
No idea.
Okay. He's got deep pockets, apparently. Eric Gilbert, I don't know if you remember that name, tight end. He was a 5-star freshman All-America, first season at LSU. His path has been LSU, had one okay season, short season, COVID year, so the stats aren't great, but he was a freshman All-America at LSU. Transferred to Florida, never played. Transferred to Georgia, barely got on the field. Off-field issues just period everywhere. Nebraska, never got on the field. Was like a wonder in the spring game, and then, they had all these high hopes and there was all this hoopla about the, 5-star ability. And now he's back in the transfer portal. So he's looking at a 5th team. Crazy.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mac Markway is back in the portal. Mac had decommitted. Was he committed to Florida prior to... Who's the guy that was at Florida that he committed to play for, the tight ends coach who used to coach at, I believe he used to be the head coach at Minnesota.
Brewster,
I believe. Was he at Florida at one point? I think he's down at Charlotte now. But anyways, Mac Markway, his dad played at Iowa. Iowa was in on him late after he decommitted. Then he ends up at LSU. I believe he's back in the portal. And then also Joe Labus is back in the portal. He plays one season at Central Michigan. He's back in the portal. And former Hawkeye defensive tackle, who I thought was very strange that he left, Ontario Thompson, went to Western Michigan, played one season. He's back in the portal. And what's interesting about him is I asked Calvin Bell specifically, and I've never had a coach respond this way, but Calvin was being honest. He basically said, I'm not sure Ontario wanted to work. They basically said that in so many words. People can go back and watch that interview, but I don't think Thompson's coming back, Matt, unless he's a different guy now than he was then. Maybe he got a wake up call, but I don't think he's going to come back. I don't even know that Iowa would take a guy like that back. Who knows?
Look at this stat I just found on the 247 transfer portal tracker. Chris Hummer is reporting that there are 1,726 FBS players in the portal so far.
Yeah.
And we're 2 days into it. There's the number of players total who entered. It's already been surpassed in 2 days.
Let me make sure we didn't. And now keep in mind, he's only.
I'm sorry, those are the first 2 years. Those are going back to 1919 or 2019 and 2020. I thought they were the last 2 seasons. Okay.
Well, let's recall, and I mentioned this earlier, but the fact that they have these roster limits now, that's changing everything too, isn't it? Because everybody has some. Doesn't every program have walk-ons?
Sure.
So guys are having to leave their schools. I'm sure some programs have fewer walk-ons to get rid of, but then that's a sad way of putting it, but that's the reality of it.
Wow, this guy's a big talent. That's a big loss that's come down in the last hour. USC wide receiver Deuce Robinson. He's a good player.
And let me see if I missed anybody. We talked about defensive lineman Ryan Keenan, Graham Friedrichsen at receiver, Jeff Bowie at defensive line. Hey, General Booty is back in the transfer portal, Mark. You like that?
I saw that.
Booty's back. And then I tweeted out about Chaz Nimrod. I said, how about a Nimrod playing at Tennessee or at Iowa as a receiver? J.J. Cole is back in the portal. Recall Iowa moved on from him when they got a commitment at Marco Linez, and now both guys are back in the transfer portal. So J.J. got buried at Iowa State. And now there's speculation that Rocco Beck's dad is being pursued by West Virginia. I don't know if you've seen this, but that would bring into question Rocco's future at Iowa State potentially, right? I don't know. Maybe not. But so, yeah, J.J. Cole's back in the portal. Not at all that Iowa would pursue him, but they did have a relationship with him at one point. He's an Iowa kid. Ethan Aga Khan, who is also a defensive lineman for Iowa, preferred walk-on. He is in the portal. And I think Kyson Van Voot, we talked about him. So I think we got everybody, Mark.
Here is a possible quarterback prospect that might be in Iowa's pay range here. Western Kentucky starting quarterback Caden Veldkamp entered the portal about 3 hours ago. 23 touchdowns last year.
They've had some coaching changes over the last few seasons, but that's been a very good pass offense over the last 5 years. So I've not watched much of him. I think I just was looking at that matchup. I can't remember who Western Kentucky plays in the bowl game, but I'd be interested to look to see what he's done. There's got to be some FCS guys that have put up big numbers, right?
Look at this guy.
Yeah.
North Texas star, Chandler Morris. Oh, man, Chandler Morris has been all over the place.
And North Texas's offense has been crazy good, too.
Oklahoma TCU. Yeah, he was a big recruit and 31 touchdowns last year. 5th nationally in passing yardage. Well, he's in the portal.
And Virginia has the money to spend.
Virginia, Oklahoma State. So
I could say Oklahoma State, but yeah.
Now, he's only going to be a 1-year guy.
Well, I was in the market for Miller Moss. Is Virginia, do you perceive Virginia, the football program, to be a program that can dip into the pockets of donors and find enough money?
Well, it's one of the worst football programs in the history of Power Conference football, but it's a great school, and I'm sure their access to wealthy donors is like their endowment. The school is wealthy,
which would make you think that there's plenty of alums that have money.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what this is turning into.
Let's see here. I guess we should mention too, just so everybody's aware. I know we're going a little overtime here, but Iowa did offer Miami, Ohio defensive back Rayon Strader, who was first team freshman All-American, first team All-MAC, and so he's on. But there have been a number. Ole Miss offered him. here today. Arkansas offered, Nebraska offered yesterday, Auburn offered yesterday, Mississippi State, Wake, Utah, Virginia, Kansas, Louisville, Oregon State, West Virginia, Georgia Tech, Iowa State, Northwestern, Cincinnati, Wisconsin. So Iowa is just part of that list. But Rayon Strader is going to be another guy. He's going to cost some money. There's another example of a guy who, hey, if you're first team freshman All-American at a MAC school in your first year, first team All-MAC, I should say, and first team freshman All-American, yeah, you're probably going to get some offers out there. And then Iowa did offer a preferred walk-on spot. You'll like this, Mark, to Braden Jackson, who is the son of NFL great Fred Jackson, former Buffalo Bill Fred Jackson.
Yes.
Do you remember where Fred Jackson played college football?
Did he not play at Lane College?
No. I'll give you $1 if you can get it.
Jackson.
I'll give you $1 if you can
him
get
up
it.
with somebody else. Is it a major program?
No.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh,
I do remember College. I don't know where that is, but I remember always seeing that on the roster, Fred Jackson.
Well, I think shame on you for not knowing where it's at, first of all. That's Eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids. So,
okay.
Yeah, Fred Jackson. So Braden is a preferred walk-on. He's got a preferred walk-on opportunity. He's attending Ankeny Centennial here, actually in central Iowa. So that will be interesting. Obviously, he's probably going to have some opportunities to be on scholarship other places, but Iowa did offer him. They'd be offering less preferred walk-on opportunities now with the new limits as well.
Okay. I wonder if that's the only co-college prospect in the history of the NFL.
Say that again.
I wonder if he is the only co-college prospect in the history of the NFL product.
That's a good question. Yeah, probably. Remember, he was ahead of C.J. Spiller when Spiller just made that was a fun running back room. I liked that. You had the old guy and Fred Jackson and the new guy from Clemson, and couldn't be too different. One guy coming from a bit of a blue blood and the other guy coming from Co.
Yeah. Yes, you're shaking out the cobwebs upstairs. Remembering those guys. Yeah. I'm trying to think who went to Lane. That might have been Fred Lane went to Lane College.
Fred Lane went to Lane College.
Yeah, I think that's why I thought Fred Jackson, Lane College.
They named the college after him, Mark?
I think the college may have preceded him slightly.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here. Make it on back next Tuesday, 4:30 Central. And of course, in the meantime, men's and women's basketball with Corey. When's the next post game?
We'll have a post game tomorrow night after women's hoops, Cyhawk women's hoops in Carver. Big game between the Cyclones and the Hawkeyes. And then Thursday night, men's basketball. And really pathetic. I tweeted this out here a little bit ago as well. Ridiculous that there's this call to arms. Fans are having to and these big social media or fairly big Iowa social media accounts are having to tweet out screenshots of the seats available. Please buy these tickets so we don't have a bunch of Cyclones around us. That's pathetic. I'm sorry. It's such a bad state of affairs. I have not talked about this, but I won't be surprised if this is Fran's last year at Iowa, depending on how things go, because the fact that they can't get that place full for a Cyhawk men's basketball game is absolutely pathetic. So there's going to be some nice Cyclones in there because, boy, Iowa State's really, really good this year, Mark.
So the record's fine overall. Letdowns in the NCAA tournament. And they play an exciting brand of basketball, right? Isn't he kind of low on defense and high on offense? So you would think that there's an entertainment factor there.
There's an entertainment factor, but is it sustainable for March success? And that's what fans point to. They're tired of, they haven't been to the Sweet 16 since 99. And that's not all Fran McCaffrey, but I mean, you can't get to the second weekend once. He's been here 14 years or whatever it's been. So, and I don't think it helps. I think for a little while it took some of the attention off of his program, but it doesn't help that the women's program has been to 2 straight national championship games. It'd been great if they could have gotten one of those, but 2 straight national title games, regardless of Caitlin Clark. But by the way, did you see that Caitlin Clark was named Time Magazine Athlete of the Year?
I did not see that.
She was just named their Athlete of the Year, Mark.
Okay.
So there you go. How does your daughter, can I ask you, how does your daughter feel about Caitlin Clark?
How does she feel about her?
Do you ever talk? to your daughter about Caitlin Clark?
I know that she exists. I know that she knew who she was before I did.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I don't know that my daughter's watching much women's basketball.
Okay.
I'll ask her that. Actually,
Yeah.
I had a call to her just a few minutes before we came on the air. I'll have to ask my daughter about that. My daughter texted me on the previous Saturday to let me know that Ryan Day should be fired, but she was saying that 2 years ago.
I'll spoil this right away. I got Ohio State losing in the first round of the playoff.
Yeah, I don't know if their heads are screwed on straight.
So if they lose, is he done?
If they're willing to pay the buyout.
Yeah, I think he may be done.
Yeah,
If they lose in the first round, I just think there's going to be too much. Like, they're already mad.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Absolutely. And I tend to agree with you. I think that it may be a detriment to them to be playing at home. Actually, they may be the only team that should be playing on the road. It might be better for them to go play on the road and get out of there and not have 100,000 people booing them at halftime because they're losing 17-10.
Or booing them as they come out of the tunnel to start the game.
Wow.
I can't imagine they do that, but.
All right, folks. For Corey, myself, Mark, appreciate you being here. See you next Tuesday.